The grand hall of Kravax shimmered under the twin suns. Tall alien guards lined the sides of the stone floor, their silver armor glowing. Banners of deep blue and gold hung from the ceilings. The air was heavy with pride, and the scent of strange, alien flowers. At the center of the hall, on a throne carved from black crystal, sat King Vorak, ruler of Kravax. He looked down with cold eyes at the humans standing before him. "This is your best," the king said, voice deep and mocking. A small, soft, human boy, Ethan stood tall, even though he was shorter than most around him. His clothes were dusty from travel, and his boots had crossed many planets to get here, but his eyes held no fear. "I didn't come to fight, Your Highness," Ethan said calmly. "I came for peace talks. Earth wishes for friendship." The court burst into laughter. Kravaxians, strong and proud, did not care for soft words. They respected strength, battle, and tradition, and peace, to them, sounded weak. The king leaned forward with a grin. "Then I offer you a challenge, human, 3 trials. If you win, I will sign your peace agreement." Ethan nodded slowly. "And if I lose?" The king's eyes gleamed. "And your Earth must never return to our space." Gasps spread through the room. It was a heavy risk, but Ethan did not step back. "I accept," he said. King Vorak laughed loud, and then, in a voice filled with pride, added something more. "And if you win all 3 trials," he said loudly, "my daughter shall be yours." The room fell into silence. Princess Lyra, standing behind the throne, looked up sharply. Her eyes met Ethan's. She had pale silver skin, long dark hair, and wore a dress that shimmered like the stars. She did not speak, but her gaze was steady, calm. Ethan blinked, surprised. He hadn't asked for that. He wasn't there for such things, but the words were spoken, and the court was watching. The challenge was public now. Ethan turned to the king and said, "Fine, I will win your trials, but not for your daughter, for respect." The crowd murmured again. Some were curious, others were still laughing inside. To them, no human could pass the Kravax trials. They were built to break the strongest. Later that night, in a guest chamber lit with soft blue lights, Ethan sat alone. He studied a small tablet in his hand, reading about Kravax culture, history, and war training. He had only hours before the first trial began. Outside, alien eyes watched him from the shadows. Guards, spies. He didn't care. He was not the strongest, not the fastest, but he had something Kravaxians didn't understand. He had human will. The next morning, the trial began in the outer arena. Thousands gathered to watch. The arena was carved from stone and metal, shaped like a circle with traps, tall walls, shifting platforms, and roaming beasts. The announcer called out, "First trial, the Gauntlet of Pain." Ethan stepped into the ring. Behind him, a thick, metal door shut with a loud thud. A loud horn sounded. Instantly, the floor beneath Ethan shook. A wall opened, and a beast charged out, 4-legged, with burning eyes and claws of steel. Fire traps hissed to life, and walls began to move, trying to crush him. The crowd cheered. They expected screams. They expected blood. But Ethan ran not toward the beast, but sideways, using a hanging rope to swing over a spike pit. The beast followed, confused. Ethan jumped, rolled, climbed, and ducked. He didn't try to fight everything. He outsmarted it. When the beast slipped into one of the traps meant for him, the crowd gasped. Ethan kept going, slipping through the puzzle of death with speed and skill. He used his mind, not muscle. He noticed how the fire traps worked and timed his steps. He used broken parts to block spinning blades. By the end, he was bruised, limping, but alive. And standing. The crowd was silent. Princess Lyra, watching from a high seat, stood slowly. She said nothing, but her hands gripped the balcony rail. For the first time in years, someone had finished the gauntlet, and that someone was a human. King Vorak's smile faded just a little. Ethan looked up at the king and said simply, "1, down." The second horn echoed across the sky. Trial 2 was coming, and the court of Kravax was no longer laughing. The sun above Kravax burned bright, as the crowd slowly filled the thinking dome. A wide, silver hall with a glass ceiling that showed the swirling sky above. This was the place of minds, not muscles. Here battles were fought through strategy, logic, and understanding. King Vorak sat tall in his throne, his hands resting on the armrests. His face was calm, but his eyes watched Ethan closely. The human had passed the first trial, but surely, he would fall now. This was the test of the war-born old Kravaxian tradition, where great leaders clashed in simulated battles, controlling fleets and resources through strategy alone. The announcer's voice echoed. The second trial begins now. The human challenger will face Master Strateger, Kel of the Kryvax fleet. A tall alien with smooth gray skin stepped forward, his eyes sharp and cold. Kel was known as the best war planner in Kryvax history. Even the king took his advice during battle. He bowed lightly to the king, then turned to Ethan with a small, confident smirk. Ethan sat across the board. He didn't smirk. He didn't show fear either. He had studied the game all night, even with very little time. He had used the small, digital tablet he brought to learn the rules and symbols, but what he couldn't learn from books, he would fill with human instinct. A glowing board lit up between them, showing stars, ships, planets, and bases. Each side had pieces to command. The rules were simple: defend your base, destroy the enemy, S. Kel moved first, placing his battle cruisers near Ethan's outer sectors. Ethan thought for a moment. Then he smiled a little. Instead of defending, he pulled his forces back to the far side of the board, forming strange patterns. The crowd whispered. To Kravaxians, retreating was a sign of fear, but Ethan wasn't retreating. It was baiting. Kel pressed forward, sending fleets deep into Ethan's space. Traps didn't stop him. Defense systems failed. Too easy, Kel said under his breath. But Ethan had expected that. He suddenly cut supply lines behind Kel's fleets, then used cloaked ships to hit from 3 sides at once. Explosions bloomed on the board in bursts of red and white. Ships were lost, bases cracked, and Kel's face turned from calm to tight surprise. Within 10 more moves, Ethan's forces had surrounded Kel's command center. The board flashed. Game over, the voice said. Silence. Then shocked gasps filled the dome. King Vorax stood quickly. His hands gripped the arms of his throne. Kel looked at the board, then at Ethan. How? He asked in a quiet voice. Ethan simply replied, humans don't always follow the rules. Sometimes, we write new ones. Princess Lyra, watching from behind a tall pillar, covered her mouth in surprise. She had never seen Kel lose before, not in training, not in war, not even in the royal tournaments. And this human had done it in his second trial. The crowd remained quiet as Ethan stepped back and bowed to Kel. You played well, Ethan said with honesty. Kel, after a pause, nodded. So did you, human. The king did not speak. He waved his hand, and the trial ended. But his face showed his frustration. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Humans were supposed to fail. They were supposed to be weak. Now the court had seen something different. Now they had seen something dangerous. After the dome emptied, Ethan walked quietly through a garden behind the royal hall. He needed fresh air. His head ached from the game. He was proud but also tired. He heard a soft voice behind him. He surprised him. Ethan turned and saw Lyra standing a few steps away. Her silver dress shimmered in the light of the small water lamps. She looked at him with curiosity now, not coldness. Did I surprise you too? Ethan asked. She nodded. Yes. No one beats Kel, not even my father. Ethan sat on a stone bench. I didn't do it to win anyone. I did it because my people want peace. If this is what it takes to earn your father's respect, I'll do it. Lyra walked closer. You don't want me. Ethan looked up calm. That's not the point. Your father turned this into a prize, but you're not a trophy. You're a person. For a moment she just stared at him. Then, softly, she said, You're different from the others who came before. I hope so, Ethan replied. A soft wind moved the trees. Distant music played from the halls. But the two of them just sat there, silent for a while. Somewhere above, a royal guard watched from a hidden point, and hurried off to report. Inside the king's private chamber, the door opened. He won the second trial, the guard said with a low voice, and he's speaking to the princess. The king's jaw tightened. Then he won't live to see the third. Night covered the city of Kryvax with a quiet darkness. The glowing lights from the palace windows made long shadows. In the garden where Ethan sat alone, he was tired but couldn't sleep. The second trial had drained his mind. But worse than that was the feeling in his chest, like something was wrong. He heard no footsteps. But suddenly someone stood behind him. You shouldn't be out here alone, human, said a cold voice. Ethan turned slowly. 3 Kryvax warriors stepped out of the dark, their armor black and smooth, their hands gripping sharp, curved blades. You're not palace guards, Ethan said. The tallest warrior stepped forward. We were sent to fix the king's mistake. You shouldn't have passed the trials. Ethan stood up carefully, his eyes scanning the space around him. So this is how Kryvax honors its word. We follow orders, not honor, the warrior replied. They moved fast. Ethan jumped back, rolled across the grass, and reached into his coat. He pulled out a small human-made device, something between a baton and a shock tool. He pressed a button. A light crackled. On its end, the first attacker swung. Ethan blocked with a baton, sparks flying. He ducked and kicked the warrior's leg, sending him to the ground. The second one tried to grab him from behind, but Ethan elbowed him in the face and used the baton to shock his armor, shorting it out. The third warrior was faster. He slashed across Ethan's arm, drawing blood. Ethan gritted his teeth but didn't fall. Then a voice rang out, "Stop." Princess Lyra stood at the edge of the garden, her eyes burning with anger. The warriors froze. "I will tell my father," she said, stepping closer. "If you kill him now, the entire court will know." The warriors hesitated. They looked at one another, unsure. "Leave," she ordered. After a long pause, the three warriors disappeared into the shadows. Ethan fell to one knee, breathing hard. Lyra rushed to him. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," he said through his teeth, but she could see the blood soaking his sleeve. She took a scarf from her waist and wrapped his arm. Her fingers worked fast and gentle. "They were going to kill me," Ethan said softly. "Yes," she replied. "My father is afraid. You're changing everything. He doesn't want to lose control." "But I thought these trials were sacred," Ethan said. "They are," she said, "but fear makes even kings break their own rules." She helped him to his feet and led him through a quiet back path in the palace. "Where are we going?" he asked. "To the Crystal Hall. It holds the path to the final trial. Most never see it until morning. But you need time. You need a chance." As they walked, Ethan asked, "Why are you helping me?" Lyra didn't answer at first. Then she said, "Because you didn't come for power. You came with peace. You spoke to me like I mattered. No one ever does that here, not even my father." They reached the Crystal Hall. It was silent, lit by soft blue light from the glowing walls. In the center was a map-an image of the trial. Arena for the final test. Ethan studied it, blood still on his sleeve. It was a wide-open circle. No traps, no puzzles, just two people. One goal, combat. He said, "This is a fight to the end." "Yes," Lyra said. "The final trial is a duel. You will face the king's champion." "Who is it?" She looked away. "A warrior named Grasky has never lost. He doesn't know the meaning of mercy." Ethan touched the display gently. "I'll need time to prepare." She nodded. "I'll bring supplies, food, something to treat that wound." He looked at her and said, "You don't have to do this." "I want to," she replied. They stood in silence again, but this time, it was different. There was no fear between them now, only trust. Somewhere far above, the king stared at a glowing screen. He had watched everything. "Let the final trial begin," he said coldly. "And this time, no one will save him." The morning of the final trial came with a heavy silence across the city of Kravax. Even the wind felt still, like the air itself was holding its breath. Inside the combat arena, thousands of Kravaxians gathered. The crowd filled every seat, and the royal court stood at attention. Their faces showed no laughter today. Curiosity, maybe, or quiet worry. Ethan stood in the center of the stone arena, his body still aching from the last fight. His right arm was wrapped in clean bandages. Lyra had brought him supplies through the night water, food, and a small energy booster to help his healing. She hadn't said much, but her eyes had spoken clearly. She believed in him now. She stood at the edge of the arena, watching him from the royal side, her hands clenched together tightly. A loud horn echoed through the air. From the other side of the arena, the king's champion walked out. He was taller than any other warrior Ethan had seen. Thick armor covered his body, dark and sharp, but it moved easily as he walked. His arms were like steel, and his face showed no emotion. He carried a long energy blade, crackling with quiet power. The king watched from his throne, calm and cold. "Final trial," the announcer said, his voice loud and steady. "To the last standing. No weapons from outside, no interference. Only one leaves this arena." As Victor Grask stepped forward, Ethan did the same. There was no handshake. No words. Just silence. The horn blew again. Grask charged first, his blade swinging hard. Ethan ducked, rolled, and barely missed the strike. Dust flew. The ground cracked under the champion's attack. Ethan moved fast, trying to stay low and quick. He had no big weapon, only a short baton given by the trial masters. It glowed softly, but had far less power than Grask's blade. Grask came again, striking fast. Ethan blocked, sparks flying, then jumped back. His arm burned from the force. He remembered something his old trainer once said: "Don't fight strength with strength, fight it with speed. Fight it with thought." Grask swung again. Ethan dodged left, then hit the champion's leg with the baton. It sparked but barely slowed him down. Grask turned and slammed his shoulder into Ethan, sending him flying backward. The crowd gasped. Ethan hit the ground hard. He coughed, dust filling his mouth. His ribs hurt. His vision blurred for a second. Get up, he told himself. He stood, legs shaking. Grask waited, not in a rush. He knew he was stronger. He thought time was on his side. Ethan watched his opponent's feet. The armor was strong but not perfect. It had gaps at the joints. He waited, breathed. Grask came again, faster. This time, thinking to finish it, he lifted his blade high. But Ethan moved first. He threw dust into Grask's eyes, blinding him for a second, then slid under his legs and struck hard at the back of the knee. The baton hit a weak spot, and the armor cracked. Grask roared in pain. Ethan didn't stop. He jumped up behind him and struck again, this time at the side of the champion's neck where the armor was thin. Another burst of sparks. Grask stumbled. The crowd shouted. Grask turned and hit Ethan with his elbow. The blow knocked him down again. Blood ran from Ethan's nose, but Grask was breathing hard now. Ethan crawled to his feet. His body was hurting everywhere, but his mind was clear. Come on, he said. Grask charged one final time. Raising his blade, Ethan waited, then jumped aside at the last moment. Grask's own power carried him too far forward. He stumbled. Ethan spun, using every last bit of strength, and struck Grask's side. The baton connected with a flash of light. Grask fell to one knee. The announcer's voice rang out. Champion is down. Human challenger remained standing. Silence. Then the sound of the crowd rising in noise. Cheers, surprise, disbelief. Lyra covered her mouth, her eyes full. Ethan stood over the fallen champion, breathing heavily. It's over, he said. Grask looked up, then nodded once. It was not anger in his eyes. It was respect. The king stood slowly, his face like stone. He spoke one word. Enough. Ethan turned to face him. He didn't smile. He just waited. The final trial was over, and the human had won. Ethan stood in the center of the arena, blood on his face, clothes torn, chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. Behind him, Grask, the great champion of Kryvax, was still kneeling. The crowd, once loud and proud, had gone quiet again. They had watched something they didn't expect, something they couldn't explain, that a human had just beaten their strongest warrior. King Vorax slowly stood from his throne. His face was hard, jaw tight, hands gripping the edge of his armrests. He did not speak right away. His eyes moved over the silent court, then returned to Ethan. He stepped forward, cloak dragging behind him, and said in a strong voice, "You have passed all 3 trials. By the law of Kryvax, you have earned your victory." Some in the crowd nodded, others looked away, still trying to understand what had happened. Then the king's voice became colder. "But I do not give you my blessing. I will not hand over my daughter to a human, victory or not." Ethan said nothing at first. He looked toward Lyra. She stood straight, not afraid, her eyes focused on her father. The tension in the air was heavy. Then Ethan spoke, loud and clear. "I never asked for your daughter. I didn't come here to win a prize. I came to prove that humans deserve respect." The court murmured. Ethan stepped closer, slow but firm. "Your people thought we were weak, soft, but we survived. We faced your beasts, your puzzles, your champion, not with hate, not with tricks, but with heart. And now I stand here, not for reward, but for peace." The king's eyes narrowed. "Use clever words," he said, "but words do not change my mind. She is my blood, my legacy. I will not let her be tied to a human." Lyra finally spoke, her voice steady. "I am not tied to anyone." The king turned sharply. "You will not speak here." She stepped forward. "I will. I have been silent for too long. I watched you challenge him. I watched you try to stop him, and still, he won. Not just in battle, but in honor." The court gasped. Many had never heard the princess speak so boldly. She continued, "You offered me as a prize, thinking he would fail, but he didn't treat me like a prize. He treated me like a person. And now, I choose." The king stared at her. Lyra walked across the arena and stood beside Ethan. "I choose him." The crowd erupted into noisome, shocked, others cheering. The king's mouth opened, but he said nothing. Ethan looked at her, unsure. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "You respected me when no one else did." The king finally raised his hand. The court went silent. "You defy me," he said to his daughter. "I choose my own path." She replied. After a long moment, the king turned and walked back to his throne. He did not bless the union, he did not smile, but he also did not stop. That was enough. The royal court slowly stepped forward. Some bowed slightly to Ethan. Others simply watched with quiet respect. Grsk stood and nodded at Ethan. You earned it. Ethan nodded back. As the sun set behind the high towers of Krivax, a quiet feeling settled over the arena. Something had changed. Something powerful. A human had come to a proud alien world. He had faced their trials. He had won their respect. But more than that, he had won something even greater. Choice, not for power, not for victory, but for understanding, and for the first time in Krivax history, the princess had made a choice of her own. A cool breeze moved through the royal garden of Krivax. Glowing flowers lit the stone paths, and the sound of soft water filled the air. Ethan walked slowly beside Lyra. After the trials, the king had allowed them to rest but said little. He had returned to his chambers, silent and alone. The court had changed. Once full of laughter at humans, now it watched Ethan with caution and curiosity. Some still doubted him, others were quietly impressed, but none could deny what had happened. A human had passed the trials, a human had faced a champion, and a human had walked away. How are you feeling? Lyra asked. Ethan smiled slightly. Like someone dropped a mountain on me, but I'm alive. She looked at him with gentle eyes. You don't have to stay, you've won. You could return to Earth. I know, he said, looking up at the stars. But things don't change just because someone wins. They change when people work together. If I leave now, nothing will grow from this. She was quiet for a moment, then said, You still want peace? Yes, Ethan said. I didn't fight your people to show I was better. I fought to show we deserve a place at the table. We can talk, we can share, we can help each other. Lyra looked away. My father. He won't admit it, but you made him think. He never thought a human could do what you did. No one did. Ethan nodded. And now, she said. They're all watching, waiting. Suddenly, a figure stepped out from the path. It was an older Kravaxian, wearing simple robes, not armor. He bowed lightly to Ethan and Lyra. I am Elder Ron, he said. I speak for the council. The council? Ethan asked. Yes, not all power sits with the king. Traditions do, but progress needs voices. Ethan waited. Ran continued. The trials are sacred, but what you did, it changed something. The younger generations saw it. They talk about you, not as a human, but as a warrior, and a man of honor. Ethan stayed quiet. The council will speak with your Earth leaders, Ron said. We want to open talks. Real talks. Lyra smiled. That's what you came for? Ethan nodded. Yes, thank you. Ron bowed again and left quietly. After he was gone, Ethan sat on a bench and rubbed his shoulder. Still can't believe. This all started with a joke, a cruel one, Lyra said softly, offering me as a prize like I was something to be given away. Ethan looked at her. I never saw you that way. I know, she said. They sat quietly for a while. Finally, Ethan asked, Do you think your father will ever accept me? Lyra looked at the palace. Not today. Maybe not ever, but he won't stop me. And that's already more than I expected. Ethan gave a small laugh. Well, that's Krivax, I guess. She laughed too. Yes, welcome to our strange world. They walked again, this time slower, their steps matching. The stars above twinkled like tiny lights across the sky, and the twin moons began to rise. Far in the distance, the king watched from his chamber window. He saw them walking, talking, and for the first time in years he didn't feel anger, he felt unsure. His daughter had made a choice. The people had seen it, and the human had passed every trial. He didn't like it, but he could not deny it. Pride would not let him speak the word. But deep in his heart, something had begun to shift, and for Krivax, that small shift might be the start of something greater. The sun rose slowly over Krivax, casting long shadows across the palace grounds. The city was alive with whispers and hope. The trials were over, but their effects were just beginning. Ethan stood beside Princess Lyra on the balcony of the royal hall. Below them, citizens gathered to hear the first joint speech from the human and the Krivaxian princess. Today, Lyra began, her voice clear and strong. We start a new chapter, not just for Krivax but for all our worlds. Ethan nodded. We proved that strength comes in many forms, through courage, through honor, and through respect. The crowd cheered. Many faces showed surprise, some showed pride, and some showed a new kind of belief. Inside the hall, King Vorak watched silently. His expression was unreadable, but inside a storm of feelings raged. Pride in his daughter's courage, fear of change, and a strange, growing respect for the human who had won his trials. After the speech, Ethan and Lyra walked through the palace halls. People stopped to greet them. The royal guards nodded. Even some of the king's advisors approached quietly. offering words of congratulations. Ethan smiled but stayed humble. He knew the journey was just beginning. Your people have a saying, Lyra said softly as they passed through a long corridor. What is it? Ethan asked. Trust is built by many small steps. Ethan thought about that. Then let's take those steps together. In the days that followed, the human delegation met with Kryvak's council members. Plans for trade, cultural exchange, and shared defense were discussed. Barriers began to fall. King Vorak remained distant but allowed it all. Sometimes, he even observed quietly, learning. One evening, as the twin moons shone bright, Ethan visited the king's chambers. Vorak sat in his throne, eyes tired but steady. You changed Kryvaks, he said simply. Ethan bowed slightly. Only showed what humans can do. Not all would have survived my trials. You are strong in mind and spirit. Thank you, Your Highness. The king's voice softened. My daughter made a choice. She is brave. I will not stop her. Ethan looked up, surprised. Neither will I, Vorak said. We must face a future together, or fall divided. The two men shared a rare moment of understanding. Back with Lyra, Ethan walked in the palace garden. She looked at him with a soft smile. Do you think the trials are truly over? Ethan shook his head. No. This is only the start. But now, we face them as allies. She reached out and took his hand. Then let us walk this new path together. As days turned into weeks, Kryvaks and Earth began a new alliance. Trade ships crossed the stars. Scientists shared knowledge. Artists exchanged stories. The story of Ethan, the human who faced an alien king's trials and won, became a legend. Not because he defeated his enemies, but because he earned respect through courage, honor, and heart. And in the center of it all, stood a human and an alien princess, proof that sometimes the greatest victories come not from war, but from understanding.